is Jeopardy!
Please welcome the host of tonight's Jeopardy episode, Gilded Age Edition, Richard Yu.
Thank you.
Please welcome today's challengers, Bob, Nathan, and Ben.
Let's look at today's unique categories for today's special episode. First, we have the Gilded Age Politics. And next, we have the politics of the Gilded Age. Well, since you are our defending champion, Bob, you get to pick the first question.
Alright, I'll take Gilded Age Politics for 1,000.
Question. This policy led to the growth of big business and let them buy out competitors.
Communism.
That's not correct.
What is laissez-faire?
Correct.
Laissez-faire was the belief in limited government involvement in the economy and was a main characteristic of capitalism during the Gilded Age. Laissez-faire advocates for individual self-interest in competition while opposing the taxing and regulation of commerce. Laissez-faire reached its climax during the 1870s during the Industrial Age as American factories began to operate freely. Competing businesses began to pop up, and with this social Darwinistic belief of the survival of the fittest, monopolies and trusts emerged, which dominated prices, amassing money in the hands of a few wealthy people.
Well, since Bob, you got the question right, you get to pick the next question.
Alright, let's take Gilded Age Politics for 5,000.
Clue is, this act was the first United States federal statute to limit monopolies.
The Affordable Care Act.
No, that's wrong.
The Sherman Antitrust Act.
Bingo.
The Sherman Antitrust Act states that every contract, combination in the form of trust or otherwise, or conspiracy, in restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations is declared to be illegal. Many states had already established similar laws. However, they were limited to intrastate commerce, and the Sherman Antitrust Act was based on Congress's constitutional power to control interstate commerce. However, due to immense political pressure from trusts and the Act's loose wording, the Act was rarely used against industrial monopolies and was ironically used for several years against labor unions, which were viewed by the courts as illegal combinations.
Well, Ben, since you got the question right, you get to pick the next category.
I'll take Politics of the Gilded Age 1,000.
Clue is, this act allowed the government to regulate railroads and was later used to regulate buses and phones.
What is the FBI?
Nope.
What is the Interstate Commerce Act of 1887?
Right.
The Interstate Commerce Act was created after concerns over the practices of railroad companies, such as banding together to set prices. The act created the Interstate Commerce Commission, or the ICC, which monitored the railroad companies to make sure they were following new regulations, making the railroads the first industry subject to federal regulation. The ICC was a 5-member enforcement board that sought to prevent monopoly by promoting competition, and also to outlaw discriminatory rate setting. Its most successful provisions were a requirement that railroads submit annual reports to the ICC, and a ban on special rates the railroads would arrange among themselves. Determining which rates were discriminatory proved to be technically and politically difficult, and in practice, the law was not highly effective.
The last question is the politics of the Gilded Age for 5,000. It's a daily double. Clue is, this act awarded federal jobs based on merit, rather than political affiliations.
What is the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act?
Bingo.
Unfortunately, the Pendleton Act had an unintended side effect. The political parties now had to find another source of income since they could no longer count on donations from wealthy job seekers. As a result, politicians turned to industrial leaders who purchased influence that assured that legislation would continue to favor big business. The Pendleton Act officially ended patronage and the spoils system in the federal government, but it did not stop corruption.
Final Jeopardy! Was the federal government promoting or regulating industry and big business? Time. Starting with Nathan, what did he put?
Well, I believe that it was a promoter because of the laissez-faire government.
Yeah, but what about the Sherman Antitrust Act? That prohibited monopolies such as the railroads.
But that wasn't enforced until the Progressive era.
There was also the Interstate Commerce Act, which gave the government power to control the railroad industry.
But what about the Penal Civil Service Reform Act?
Wait, guys, I think it might be both.
Ben, you're right. It is both.
We have our new champion of Jeopardy Special Edition, Gilded Age, Ben Slusher.